Wednesday enters for the doubles. At precisely 7:30 on the night of June 22nd, a small woman in a fur coat entered the advertising department of a newspaper office, the Comet, in the city of Auckland, New Zealand. There are still some flat-worldians, or as Swift called them, big-endians, who have not yet been trained by crossword puzzles, the increasing strangeness of politics, or the mystery of the League of Nations, which is so rapidly replacing that of the Holy Trinity in modern life, to use their imagination. To these, such a statement as the above will convey nothing. It will be heard absently, with one or with half one ear, received into the brain like cotton wool and forever forgotten. You must have met such people. In the midst of a rubber of bridge they quite suddenly get up, twiddle the black knobby nose on the expressionless face of the radio, and produce out of nowhere the most appalling shrieks, cut clean amidships. You cannot for the life of you tell whether it is one of those Russian art murders, where everyone stands about saying "Tovarish" as the pig bleeds his last, or merely Gracie Fields soothing the savage beasts of the Lancastrians. They return to their chairs with neat, tucked-in little smiles of gratification on their lips. They have, however, not the faintest idea of the appalling thing they have done, or why they did it. Their functioning is purely automatic, and involves neither purpose nor recollection. I should explain that from this class is drawn the larger number of ghosts. At the end of their lives they fail to realize that they have died, and go on doing and saying just what they have always said and done. This accounts for the surprisingly inane character of the séance. At a calmer stage, slightly higher, are those who, hearing mention of actions in a strange city in a strange country, will lay down their newspapers saying vaguely, "Auckland? Auckland. Is New Zealand in Australia?" they will wonder, "or is it the other way around?" But they will go no further with the matter. By elimination we come thus to the ideal type of listener, the man who knows a bit and can believe or imagine much more. To such a one, Wednesday Gilfillan's progress into the Comet office would not be just the apparition of a tiny pink face in a cochineal-coloured Milky Way of faces, a millionth bubble of personality on a millionth wave. He would be able to deduce at least something about her. Hearing that it was 7:30 p.m. on June 22nd, the shortest day in the year, he would assume an hour well after dusk. He could see then the hilly black street, its bitumen glistening wet and rough as sharkskin, its pools of lamplight shining like spilled Lucca oil, its crisp neon flashes, scarlet, green and blue, branding the brows of the taller buildings every 5 minutes. And a certain awful, sinister sameness about these buildings might suggest to him their architect was Cain, and that the corpse of Abel would probably be discovered in an advanced state of decomposition somewhere beneath them, if one went snooping. He would see taxis slithering wetly downhill like streamlined and tailless black rats. Loosened tresses of light from sixth-story windows would dazzle his eyes, as befell the prince when he stood under the tower and Rapunzel poured down on him her irrepressible amber hair. If the intelligent stranger's senses were keen, he should be able to pick up, from where he stood, at least 3 different scents. Beer first, from 76 assorted taverns, which all cater for the beer-drinking public and make no bones about it. Next, a whiff of salt sea, not more than 5 minutes' sprint away. sea lying flat, black and restive at the base of Queen Street. 80 years ago, ocean could turn Queen Street, the main thoroughfare, twice daily into a stinking tidal ditch. Seahorses bucked and snorted, flourishing their green rumps at the very base of Withycombe Street, where the Comet Office stands. The third scent is of black soil mixed with rain, and the cold, just opening petals of winter flowers, planted in beds on the lawns of Albert Park. At first glance, this retreat looks a fair imitation of an English park. Then you notice that many of its trees are queer old shambling customers, half defiant, half apologetic, wholly indigenous. Brass-mounted cannon, mounted below one of the more pregnant-looking statues of Queen Victoria, try to sneer at the seagulls and sparrows whose droppings insult their antiquity. There was a time, they remind themselves, when Auckland was very glad of the belligerent cannon mouths gaping out to the open sea, and waiting their chance to let the rumoured Russian ships have it. A grimy little statue of a girl in a woolen singlet, bearing beneath one arm a dead but uncooked halibut, also looks somehow different from the class of marble person one encounters in English reserves. Overall, the ghostly whispering of rain. It sounds like a multitude of little silver snails all sneezing and spitting at once. In its black and silver winter's tale comparison, Withycombe Street achieves a dignity vanished with daylight. It is a street with a history, a street where the intelligent stranger, shutting his eyes, might hear the shuffle of silver-buckled shoes, the imperious stomping of elastic-sided boots, spellbound on some eternal journey. Turning with a sigh from pickled past to flamboyant present, and wishing that the neon lights did not twitch quite so much like Tic Delarue, the stranger would then see the Comet doors open before Wednesday Gilfillan, see her shake herself like a wet spaniel, sleek raindrops oozing down inside her collar, before she disappeared from the stone steps. She held the doors apart for a moment, peering at the clerks behind the counter. Then the stiff hinges gave her a push as if to say, "Get along with you, do, and don't waste our valuable time. Business is business." Wednesday released the doors hastily, upon which they swung forward and caught her a blow behind. She said, "Oof," and advanced upon the counter, rubbing the rear of her fur coat. The clerks showed no interest in her, but there are thousands who would not be interested if in the City Hall a sea lion could walk up to them and offer a flipper, with that mannered charm of which sea lions are capable. Stunt, they would think. Only that, and nothing more. Wednesday did not look like a sea lion, as she wrote out her advertisement, for which one of the clerks handed her a form saying, "Twopence word over there, please." But she did look like some kind of friendly wet animal, and not only because of her coat. Her eyes, deep-set and brown, sometimes looked small as hazelnuts. On the other hand, she had a trick of letting the two black flowers in their centres suddenly open out, wide and lustrous. She had a little brown face, running to smile and wrinkle, with delicate plucked brows which tried to get together and commune at the top of her nose. Wrinkles lay softly under her skin, from which you might deduce that she was every day of 37. Her fawn-coloured kid gloves were damp, and when she peeled them off you could imagine her hands busy shelling acorns or removing the blood-red peel from some tropical fruit. They were little, deft, wrinkled, with pointed fingers thin as claws. Unless you were well up in animals, you might find Wednesday's 4-footed prototype hard to place. But Naples, her second son, had no doubts at all on the matter. "Mummy is a vole," he said decidedly. Naples had never seen a vole in the flesh. Unfortunately, they are not natives, and nobody seems to have thought up a reason for importing them. Yet in his heart, Naples had always known voles from A to Z, and when one of them looked into his cot at night, the misty halo of the little blue enamel lamp swimming behind her earnest brownness, he was not to be misled. Quite often he simply called her "Ol' Vole," and she took no offence. The advertisement cost Wednesday 1 shilling 10 pence. She paid out of a black bag fastened by drawing together a linked silver ring at its top. Then she smiled at the clerk and left the office. Unhappily, his eyes were sealed, and he saw no more than a lady who wore demi-day sealskins and tendered him a pink slip of paper together with the correct sum. But when Wednesday descended the steps outside, a passer-by saw her. He was drunken, white-haired and unshaven, drunken enough to remember his youth. He came forward and caught at her sleeve, saying, "'Scuse me, lady, 'scuse me." Wednesday did not much like drunken men, not because she disapproved of them as a fact, but because there seemed so little she could do with them. She drew her arm away, smiling uncertainly. But the drunken man remembered yet more of his youth. With wonderful clearness he saw the great rosy and crystal wings unfold behind her head. He saw the lissom slightness of Wednesday's body, and how it could dance like a mad shepherdess, who is nevertheless at heart so respectable that she might easily induce Pan to wear pants. He saw Wednesday girt about with cymbals, corn sheaths, stout doves, and olive branches. "'Scuse me," he stammered again, weak but defiant. "Think you're beautiful." He repeated beautiful several times, softly and with awe, like a priest at a ritual. Then he found to his surprise that he could no longer pronounce it, and shed a few holy tears. Wednesday smiled at him. "I'm glad you think so," she said, and went on, feeling the silvery rain slip round her like a garment. She was glad that the drunken man had mentioned she was beautiful, glad that all men, whosoever, should see and know it. It was true. That she was like a vole, and was also undeniable. But Naples would have been the first to flatten the nose of anyone who suggested that voles are not lovely and pleasant in their aspect, as in their lives and personal habits. Behind her volishness, the other and taller presence shone out. It could carry wheat sheaves and poppies without looking incongruous. It was a sort of domesticated angel, yet not without a sense of humour. Men found it irresistible. Only temporarily, Wednesday had to admit. She supposed that was because of moments of crisis, such as happen in the best regulated love affairs. She lost her grip of the wheat sheaves, and sat huddled up, just as a vole. However, vole or not, she always managed to retain the friendship of her lovers, which was the main thing. There was always another lover where the first one came from, but how in the world could one replace a friend? To lose a friend, that would be like having an arm or a leg torn off. That would be like having the heart removed from one's body. But it needn't happen. Love blossomed and shone and passed. Friendship remained. And there were always the children. That reminded Wednesday. She went into a stationer's shop. It was late shopping night. And bought some wooden animals for Naples, and for Dorset a packet of Chinese water flowers, the kinds which open up when you drop them in a saucer of water. They had inky colours, cuttlefish blue, violet, magenta. Naples' wooden animals were made in Germany. She considered plasticine for Attica, but decided it would be taken as an insult. Attica's white, angry hands that went tearing after the spirit hidden in lumps of clay couldn't waste time with toys. She would have to win anything she could out of the earth itself. When she was 15 and had learned to behave herself, thought Wednesday optimistically, she could go to a school of art in London or Paris. About the twins, Wednesday could do nothing. That was the worst of having Maritana, though only God knew what they could have done without her. Maritana wasn't a nurse, she was the nurse, the sort who inhabits palaces and cottages in fairy tales. Her fat bronze face shone like a Christmas pudding, and her eyes were black currants. For 10 years she'd been everything but wet nurse to the children. First Attica, then, at discreet intervals, Dorset and Naples, and now the twins. Wednesday didn't think Maritana could have restrained from getting into the condition necessary for wet nursing the children either, but for the fact that babies of her own would have taken up her time. But a kitchen full of brownies would have been rather jolly, thought Wednesday. I wonder if it's too late. I should say not. I must put it up to Maritana. She saw a Hindu fruiterer's shop, beautiful with chestnuts, guavas, and expensive forced mushrooms. Instantly a sort of ecstasy came to her. She could see the enormous kitchen of her house, L'Entente Cordiale, a cliff-sheltered house less than 20 miles away by service car and boat. The beautiful wood, kauri and maho, built deeply into its walls, still haunted the air with fragrance. There was no drying the sappy optimism out of those woods. Whitewash domesticated the big cavern, which was the family's favourite room. But the fire was an immense open one, so every time the northerly blew, smoke huffed and puffed like a gin from the chimney, and the sooty flames twinkled and shook their hips and were droll, and the whitewash became another shade off-white. It was coated with the warmth of their living together. Wednesday wouldn't have it rewashed for anything. To remove Attica's fingerprints and crimson lake instead of blood after a first day with a paint box. To clean off Naples' running tigers and bears, Dorset's laborious Gothic alphabet. She couldn't, and she wouldn't. The centre of the kitchen was a long table of white pine. They had all their meals there, except balcony meals, picnic meals, and the very rare and exclusive guest meals. Seating herself in imagination at the head of her table, Wednesday looked down the row of fire-flushed faces and felt her heart could almost break for pleasure in them. Attica wouldn't comb her hair, but she wore a cherry-coloured ribbon in it. If a girl at 9 years old can look like a fruit, Attica was like a black cherry. Dorset, aged 8, came next. Dorset was the one who always pulled her mother's chair back, looking at her, a little anxious, a little hot, not quite sure whether the family was good enough to pass muster. Dorset made Wednesday smile. He was the only one of her tribe with the slightest sense of communal responsibility, and yet, queerly enough, he had more real spirit of adventure than the rest put together. The rest were lovely, unconscious, gracious, tangled-haired shadows on the golden screen of the days. Dorset was the little Englishman. He was very introspective, always pulling himself out of bogs and climbing up mountain peaks. That was what Wednesday intended to do with him in real life, turn him into an explorer, where all his pluck, his sense of direction, his fine sturdiness wouldn't be eaten up by the locusts of other people's dependence on him. Others would have selected the reliable Dorset as the businessman of the family, but Wednesday was determined that if plod he must, he should plod among paths where great palms bent down their sabres and stiff rattling fans before him, and little parrots with hooked noses chattered, a greenness and a blinding goldness before his eyes. Naples wasn't so easy. At the moment he didn't seem interested in much but animals, but he was only 4. "Tell us a story, Vol." All their table napkins and silver rings balanced by fat carved kiwis, the gift of their great-grand-uncle Elihu Corson, the only one of the family who recognised Wednesday's children. "For what we have received, Lord makes truly thank Christ say Amen." Then the chestnuts, glossy in their jackets, perched impudently as goblin birds on the bars of the fire grate. Spit, and one jumps to the far end of the kitchen. Naples and Attica wrestle for it under the table. "Ooh, Lego! All right, Scratch Cat, scratch away. Mother says ladies first. Ladies aren't Scratch Cats, Scratch Cat." Dorset, with his blue eyes, stares hard at the 9th chestnut, because the moment that pops, you should wish, and Dorset did the wishing for the whole family. The others just wanted, found, and took. The twins were as yet so fat and pink that they looked like cabbage roses or pink sugar Dutch dolls. Surely if you bit their legs and arms, there'd be sweet liqueur inside. You didn't want to. You just wanted to flatten your nose in the creases of their necks or middles and growl over them like a bear. Maritana would say to Dorset, "Doretti, you wash up those nappy, ah?" And Dorset, who had been gazing at the beautiful nudity of the twins, would spring to attention, red-faced at having forgotten something that might be interpreted as a duty to his family gods. Wednesday thought she might easily love Dorset best. But then she remembered Attica's hands, plunged into sticky clay, agonizing after the hidden shapelessness. Naples lying on his back under the nanny goat, trying to drink milk from her hairy udder, until the nanny put a hoof in his eye. And the twins' creases as they lay basking in the firelight, waiting for their nappies. "I can't decide," she thought desperately. "I'll just have to have another baby and somehow work it so that she is a compound of perfections and makes the others look like fools. A pity, when 5's such a nice number." At this moment the Hindu fruiterer saw her peering through the window pane at his chestnuts. Rain was blurred all about her. It had splashed and widened on the glass like little silver bullets used for the potting of witches. More rain ran down her sealskins and into her brown shoes. Her hat, once of bronze velours, was now without form and void. The fruiterer jabbered excitedly to his confer. He was saying that the woman outside must surely be a spirit, since she smiled, and white women, as the whole world knows, do not smile. In the Comet office, the clerk who received Wednesday's advertisement handed it over to another clerk. "Queer way of putting it," he said. "Huh?" replied the other young man, after a cautious survey. He then placed it in a wire basket, and its troubles were over until it reached the printing department, where nothing went wrong with it except that the compositor dropped out the final L in Gilfillan. The advertisement read, "Birth notices. To Wednesday Sabrina Gilfillan, privately. Twins, boy and girl. Londonderry and Limerick, all doing well." The advertisement, it may be remarked, did not in any way mention or felicitate Mr. Gilfillan, nor did it add the customary "no visitors for 7 days." The second point is readily explained. Wednesday's twins were already over a month old. The first point is almost as easily elucidated. There was no Mr. Gilfillan. There never had been any Mr. Gilfillan. Gilfillan was, and remained, Wednesday's own maiden name. In place of Mr. Gilfillan, or as novelists would have called him, Mr. Wright, there stood only Constantine, Edward, Beppo, and finally Michael. Michael was the father of Limerick and Londonderry. If anything, Wednesday loved him best of all, especially since the twins had turned out such infant peaches. She had sincerely hoped that Michael was going to last forever. It was not her fault that he failed to pass the test, and, for the matter of that, not Michael's fault either. If Wednesday had been asked to blame anything, she would have blamed the state of affairs which does not give everyone the advantage of good manners, and the lack of laughter, the right sort of laughter. However, blame was unnecessary, Michael being now on his way to Jamaica. None of this knowledge was available to the staff of the Comet office, nor did they ask for it. No matter how queer the advertisements they handled, there was usually some perfectly simple, uninteresting explanation behind them. They let the birth notice of Wednesday's twins go through, muttering only "queer" and As for the compositor, a bitter man with a face like a walnut that nobody could break and that had a worm inside. Anyhow, all he did after dropping out the letter L was to blaspheme his supposed but actually quite innocent maker, and long for 4 a.m. when the paper was put to bed. What was the Comet's daily bread, and butterless at that, was Wednesday's vitamin B. Again, to the Gilfillan family, it was nothing less than a straight draught of prussic acid. They had never been able to think of Attica in terms of ruthless white hands and hunks of clay, of Naples as a prospective lion-tamer, or of Dorset as a blue-eyed child who might one day, given a leg up, be the first to stand breathless and unbelieving on the summit of Mount Everest. It was too much to hope that they should think of Limerick and Londonderry in terms of pink creases. Nor did they. This chapter from Wednesday's Children by Robin Hyde was read by Erica Kroger.